Because
Welcome to episode 35, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of Construction Dream Team, where I interview industry leaders and experts so you can learn about the people side of construction and build your construction dream team based on OPE, other people's experiences. The shortest way to success is to learn from others who've already been there and done that. You don't have to suffer anymore. I'm here to tell you, you're going to suffer less at least. And so I hope that everyone today has been listening, because every week when someone shares their stories, they also give us a resource, something that is meaningful to them that they want to share with all of you. And we have put all those together in one place at constructiondreamteam.com/resources. All these resources are on one page there for you to look at. And we also made a deal with Audible that if you're not an Audible person now, you can get a free book. If you just click on a link on any of the books that are on that resource page, Audible will give you that book for free. So check it out at constructiondreamteam.com/resources. So let us dive in. We are so privileged today to have our guest, Tracy Thomas. She comes from all over the world to bring a perspective that I think will be very interesting and enlightening for all of us. I know I'm really excited to learn from her. She is the Director of Construction Operations for the U.S. State Department, Bureau of Overseas Building Operations, or OBO. Tracy Thomas is a career member of the Senior Foreign Services of the U.S. Department of State, Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations, where she currently directs the construction operations for all new U.S. Embassy and consulate projects worldwide. Now, that's pretty darn cool. Tracy is also championing the OBO partnering program. So there's partnering worldwide. And currently it's in the pilot development process. So welcome, Tracy. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of Construction Dream Team.
thank you, Sue. It's my privilege to be here and tell you more about our program.
That's so cool. So that's quite a title you have. I don't know how it fits on a business card, but I'm sure it does. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be the director of all the construction that's happening on the overseas buildings for OBO.
Well, my journey began 16 years ago. I joined OBO as a Foreign Service construction engineer. And doing construction in a foreign service context has been amazing and a dream come true for me. I started out on a project in Mali, in West Africa, and I had the privilege of being the deputy project director under a very seasoned project director. From there, I was looking over embassy construction in Fiji and Yemen and then Pakistan, all on new embassies. So then it was a natural progression for me to lead construction operations worldwide from our program office in Arlington, Virginia.
Wow. So how many projects do you have going on?
We have $20 billion worth of live construction now and dozens of projects in every corner of the globe.
Wow. That is quite an undertaking, but also what a wonderful perspective to have.
Oh, yes.
So that's what we want to capture, some of your great perspective. So tell us more about the State Department's OBO office. Just tell us more about what they do, how it works.
Well, OBO is the real property manager for all U.S. diplomatic facilities around the world. We manage a portfolio of properties in nearly 300 locations, and it's valued at over $80 billion. Now, most of our projects are done by American contractors. And so our approach to oversight and inspection varies from what I know in domestic construction, because we have a full-time on-site team of 5 to 10 Americans, supplemented by 5 to 10 local engineers and architects. So the hands-on engagement and opportunity every day differs from what I experienced in the States.
That's very interesting. So how do you get your workforce for these projects?
We have foreign service construction engineers like myself. We supplement through other engineers advertised on USA Jobs and Monster.com. And then when we're in country, we advertise at local universities and local sources to find engineers and architects. And you'd be amazed at the local talent that we have on our teams.
I can believe that. That is so cool. So I also understand that you are championing an OBO partnering program. So tell us about your partnering program and maybe a little bit about why you kind of came to this.
Well, we're just getting started setting up a new partnering program. OBO did this 10 to 15 years ago and quit for reasons really unknown to me. But currently, our program is growing so fast in both volume and complexity that, in my opinion, our workforce is not keeping up either on the government side or the contractor side. So there's really a lack of experience in the field offices. And partnering, we think, will help bridge that gap in experience. And my record in collaborating in very complex contract structures and in very difficult environments made me a natural fit to be the champion for our partnering program.
So what does your partnering program entail? I know it's piloting now, but sort of what does it sort of entail at this point?
So we've selected 2 projects to pilot. One is in Kampala, Uganda, and the other is in Moscow. And these 2 projects offer a diversity in terms of contract delivery, scope, and location, but they have in common the general size and the general experience of the contractors themselves.
So what's the size of these and what's the scope of these projects?
The scope of one is a new office annex building on an existing embassy compound and some security upgrades that go with that. And the other one is more of a renovation project. And the first one is design build, and the second one is design bid build. And the size of the projects is on the order of between $100 million and $200 million. We also hired a consultant to observe the steps that we're taking to plan the partnering program and to implement it so that they can recommend refinements to what we're doing. We also hope to develop a set of best practices because some of our challenges are predictable. So we want to develop best practices to facilitate solutions to security challenges, logistics, commissioning, and those things that are so difficult in a foreign environment.
I can see that would be really very difficult issues, but if you could capture the lessons learned and then put it into some kind of process or procedure that could be communicated, then maybe it will make it less challenging.
Yes. I mentioned the experience gap. That also includes that we've had some challenges expanding our contractor pool. Some of our contractors have proved very successful and they know what to do. But some of our newer contractors have challenges, but they shouldn't have been a surprise. We know we're going to have a security challenge. We know how difficult it is to do commissioning of sophisticated systems when the local labor force maybe hasn't run that kind of equipment before. So we intend to set up solutions where if we're not doing formal partnering on every project, at least we could introduce these tools to let people know how they should approach commissioning, for example, or how they need to prepare for logistics, especially if there's a diplomatic connection to it, or how they need to prepare for all of the security operations and security constraints that are involved in our projects.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of security issues these days too, and the technology's evolving as well. So is that ever affecting your projects too, as the technologies are changing?
Yes. A most recent example is the secure portions of the embassy have limitations on what kind of communication devices can be used, for example. But these days, For example, the technology that's available in lighting devices, even from what you would buy in your home, is smart technology. And it's more expensive to buy the dumb devices than it is the smart devices. And they're connected to the Internet of Things. And yet, the security requirements don't let that kind of communication capability exist in the devices. So now we take what might be commonly installed in a typical commercial construction project, and we can't use it in a diplomatic setting. That's one example
That's
of how
very
we're dealing with
interesting.
technology.
Yeah, I see that as an opportunity for someone out there who wants to be helpful in kind of creating a pool of some of these appropriate fixtures. And
Yes, indeed.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about how do you go about selecting your contractor for a project like this? Where does the pool come from?
The pool comes from contractors who want to have a presence in worldwide construction. Many of them share our mission to do diplomacy worldwide. The work is all governed by federal contracting, and it comes from a different bureau in the State Department than OBO. So that may be common in other federal contracting environments where the program office is separate than the contracting office. We plan our projects according to a list of priority missions overseas, funding available, and real estate available. Part of OBO manages the sale and purchase of our real estate. So when projects are selected, the first step in the contracting pool is pre-qualification. So the financial capabilities and others have to be demonstrated first through pre-qualification, and then the request for proposal goes out through Fed Biz Ops to get the bids only to those who have pre-qualified. So the bidding process isn't so much the limiting factor as the pre-qualification is.
And what kind of pre-quals is there?
It's mainly volume of work performed on similar scope and size of projects over a limited time. You can't have relevant experience 30 years ago. It has to be in a relevant time window.
So really proving they have the capability
Yes.
to do it. Cool. So if contracting office is separate, who chooses which methodology you use for delivering the project? Is that you guys get to choose that, or does the contracting office choose that?
It's a team approach. We have a project development office, and construction provides subject matter experts when the project is being planned and designed, for example, and we work very close with our procurement officers. We have to meet small business targets, so that's a challenge as well. And we decide together on the best contract delivery based on the risk of the project.
That's cool. What are some of the key challenges you face in leading projects overseas? It seems sort of daunting to me.
Yes, the nature of the mission is intrinsically challenging. We are building state-of-the-art facilities to U.S. codes under rigorous security standards in remote locations or austere environments. We typically use local labor who may not be familiar with U.S. construction practices or safety practices, and we do all of that within a diplomatic context in a potentially difficult business climate, and that captures the challenge.
That sounds very overwhelming, but also kind of exciting because you guys have figured it out. I mean, you figured it out enough to build stuff. I know it's never going to be perfect, but to create a labor force kind of where you're at, what kind of steps do they go through to kind of get that labor force up to speed a bit?
That's one of the most rewarding aspects of the job for me. It falls under what I call technology transfer, because we're taking a skill set. Safety is probably the most demonstrable one, but in any area, we're taking a skill set of how we do things in the U.S. and we're teaching local labor. And our general contractors do that more than my field office does. But it's through hands-on training. Our projects overseas, we build, one of the first things you do is build the offices that we are in. You don't just call and have a trailer delivered. We have to build our offices, and they have to meet security standards themselves. And usually there's a large training facility. So our contractors put on training classes to teach how to paint and how to wire and how to do things like that.
That's
so
exciting.
The more they can embed, for example, American skilled supervision or local skilled supervision, depending on the country, and then hire the local labor and train them. Again, that's one of the most rewarding parts of the project to me.
Yeah, because you're teaching someone to fish. Yeah.
Yes.
So they have that skill forever. Yeah.
I recently came out of Pakistan, and I noticed that some of the public works team from the city of Islamabad were wearing brightly colored safety vests. And I wondered if that was a result of construction safety that we had done on our project.
That's cool. Very cool. How do you envision the partnering program really helping overall with the mission, which sounds like it's absolutely mission driven, but also maybe the pragmatic things of what other objectives you might have?
Well, it's our opportunity to foster trust in a structured environment with team members that may lack experience, as I mentioned. My career started where I was mentored under a very experienced project director, but as our program has grown, that opportunity is less for some of our new project directors. And when construction is booming in the U.S., there's less skilled labor that wants to go overseas and work. So there's a lack of experience there as well. So to have a structured environment that you can build the trust is one of the primary benefits. We hope to achieve stronger relationships in the field office, of course, to have timely and equitable solutions to the challenges. The risk to overseas work, I think, is an order of magnitude higher for our contractors, because if you can't get solutions right away, the cost of delay is too high.
And do you end up with claims on projects? Is that something that happens on these projects, or is that not something that normally happens?
Unfortunately, it does happen from time to time. There is a model to procrastinate the resolution to the end of a job and have large requests for equitable adjustment. And if you've got folks who are rigid in their opinions and won't make an adjustment, then unfortunately it goes to claims. And we would like that not to happen.
Yeah. Do you envision your partnering program kind of helping with that, so that issues get brought up maybe before they're still an issue before they're a problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly when we don't have a dispute.
I think our folks in the field offices are pretty good at implementing quick solutions, but they're not always quick to recognize when compensation may be due to our contractors who made the quick solution, but perhaps I need some compensation or some relief on the schedule.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the partnering process will help with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us about have you already done a pilot project, or are they just now starting?
We selected the projects, and the one in Kampala, we have partnering day scheduled in 2 weeks.
Exciting.
We've got everyone planned to go over, and we'll do it in the country, in Kampala on site. In future, we may select other alternate locations, but we think there'll be a large benefit to being right on the ground and seeing the work happening while we're discussing partnering. We also want to align our future partnering sessions. We're targeting to do that quarterly, but to align it around a significant milestone. For example, if we're going to top out on concrete, perhaps we'll do a partnering around that. If we're doing a safety audit, have the partnering meeting and discuss the safety audit, or commissioning kickoff, for example. So we don't want the partnering meetings to happen at random dates. We want them to be coupled with other significant milestones on the project.
Yeah, and hopefully celebrations as well.
Yes.
Yeah, success, yeah. Building on itself. So I know that you're going to be kicking this off and you're going to be having quarterly partnering. Are you doing any other things around the partnering, like components to the partnering, like a monthly survey or scorecard, or anything else that you guys are kind of built into this partnering program? an executive team, a core team, stakeholder involvement? I mean, what is there anything else?
We're setting up communication protocols. We haven't set the times of those. We'll make all these agreements on partnering day. We will be identifying our key indicators and surveying those, I believe, on a monthly basis. And all of that will be led by one of our IPI facilitators.
Yay! That's cool. So I know you're leading teams all over the world, and really teams of teams all over the world. And I can only imagine the cultural differences between this. What do you think is your greatest strength as a leader?
I believe my greatest strength is pulling the team together. And in that, it's important to discover and capitalize on shared values. A story I like to tell is I got my team together and asked them what their values were. How do you know unless you ask them? And one of the Americans said that punctuality was probably his strongest value. And one of the local staff said that respect was his most important value. And we had a problem with the local staff coming in late. So we had a conflict because the American said, look at these guys are always late. They're disrupting our program. And the local engineer came and said, he's so disrespectful every time he talks to me, and I come to do my work and he's disrespectful just because I came in a few minutes late. And so how I bridged the gap was explain to the local staff that when they're late to meetings, in fact, it is disrespectful. And so we were able to bridge the gap and be more punctual and respectful in how we treated one another. So that's an example. I think that's one of my strengths. Also, a key to empowering teams is making sure everyone understands their authority and the basis of their authority. So, for example, our project directors are contracting officers' representatives, which is a delegated authority from the contracting officer. So I know how to stay in my lane on technical interpretation because it's delegated to me. So it's important that everyone on my team knows the basis of their authority that I've empowered them with so that they can make decisions, for example, on their inspections or their submittal reviews.
Very cool. Just backing up a little bit on the 2 pilots you're doing.
Yeah.
What's the duration? I know these projects are like $100 million. What's the duration that a project like that will go? How long will it take?
They're generally 2 to 3 years, something like that. So we will meet quarterly through the duration of that time span.
That sounds like the durations are pretty typical of what you would have even in country here. I mean, in the United States. For a $100 million project of that size would take about that much time.
Yes, yeah. And some of our larger projects exceed $400, $500 million, and those take 4 years plus.
A little bit longer, yeah.
The other thing that we did in selecting our pilot projects was we have this as a principle that parties should be willing to partner. So rather than select future projects yet to be awarded and not understand the perspective of partnering with a new contractor who's not identified yet, we selected projects that had already been awarded in order to have a willing partner on the part of the general contractor. And that brought some risk with it because as a project gets started, if there's already some conflict, you got to be careful when you imprint partnering, which should be as soon as possible. And yet we had projects starting and we wanted to select a pilot. So we discerned where we had willing partners, and that was partly how we selected our projects.
Cool. So I'm sure that you have had projects where not everything went exactly as you had hoped it would. So what is the biggest challenge you've ever faced in your entire career? Take us back to that worst moment.
I was working in Yemen during the Arab Spring uprising. I was sleeping on the floor of an office because our housing was deemed not secure. But what made it one of my worst moments is I didn't feel like I had the full support of my team in Washington. And I had missed some cultural cues. This was not an American general contractor, it was an exception. And I made some missteps on the cultural differences between the contractor and myself. And that was a moment that I had to do a reset on my leadership style and my teamwork approach. And that was probably my most challenging moment.
So what happened as a result of this?
Well, one thing that helped me regain my focus was, in fact, the embassy was attacked in that time frame, and a portion of work that we had just completed and just validated that it met the security requirements was completely destroyed in the attack. And someone mentioned to me how sad that was. I just finished it and then it got destroyed. But that in fact became a gratifying moment because it met the standard. Had it not been there, the results of the attack would have been far worse. So it was gratifying to know that we had met the security requirements and that it held and that there was no loss of life at all during the attack. What also happened during that time is, I mentioned we do construction in a foreign service context, and the State Department really focuses on leadership and management training. So I had gone to a leadership class in this time frame, and this book was recommended called The Art of Possibility. It's written by Benjamin Zander, who is the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic. So the book is full of music analogies, which I relate to. And he said at the age of 40, it dawned on him that the conductor of an orchestra doesn't make a sound, but it's up to the conductor to get the harmony and the rhythm right of everyone in that orchestra. So when I got back to Yemen, I pulled my team together and told them that experience and that analogy, and told them I was going to change my style at meetings. I mentioned I had made some missteps culturally, and so I was being put in a bad light because of it. And how I overcame it is I empowered my team to speak at meetings. And literally in meetings, sometimes rather than speaking, I cued my engineers who I knew had a question or issue, and I signaled them to speak so that I spoke less. And that was a really moment of change in my leadership and in my management on that project.
You became an orchestra leader.
I became an orchestra leader.
As I think we all, as leaders, probably could learn from. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what comes out of it is a beautiful sound.
You have to inspire the music.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. And also the Art of Possibility, I've heard from others, is awesome. And we will put a link to that in the show notes for this episode, so it'll be there.
Yeah. Another moment of success for me, I had mentored a project director who was having some relationship issues on his project, and I gave him a copy of the book. I always have spare copies of that book with me, and I had forgotten that I gave him a copy of that book. And he is in his own position of leadership now, and he was dealing with a situation, and he pulled out that book. And so I know that it works, and I'm thrilled that others are adopting the principles that are in that book.
That is so cool. You heard it here. Get the book. Go to the page and find it. So what is the very best advice you have ever gotten?
I am told that sometimes I'm an intense individual, and I'm a self-admitted perfectionist. And the first time I was a project director was in Fiji. And I got this advice to be careful what I highlight as a leader in meetings. Because I'm so detail-oriented and I'm a perfectionist, I would follow up everything in meetings, and everyone would scramble away trying to satisfy what I had mentioned. And I was wearing everybody out, and they were exhausted trying to satisfy because they thought I cared about everything I mentioned. So the best advice was to measure what I say at a meeting because as the leader, what you say, they're going to pay attention to. So I try to really put priority on what I need action on and need to be knowing is important. And other items that need to be done, and I follow on in an after action to someone so that it's not engaged in by every single person at the table.
Very smart. So I know you probably use tech as you're traveling all over the world and trying to keep track of all of these different projects that are going on. What's your favorite piece of tech?
That's a great question, and people who know me know that I don't really embrace technology so readily. So my small flip phone was my favorite piece of tech for a long time.
It came back and it went away.
I've since moved up to smartphone. But my favorite thing about technology is the potential of data analytics and data mining. With our portfolio around the world, one would think that we could gauge and measure risks and how we solved them. We ought to have predictive models of risk when we see things might be failing, and yet our technology hasn't kept up and we haven't been able to do that. So we have programs going right now to improve the way we report our data across platforms so that we can mine the data. And the dashboard approach of seeing where your risks might be so you don't have to dig them out by hand, but software is telling you where to look. That's very exciting potential to me in technology,
yes.
And that's from someone who doesn't always embrace technology.
Yes, I think what I'm seeing in the industry right now is, I don't know whether technology just caught up or a light bulb went off, but it seems like there's a sea change right now with people understanding big data is important and that we need to use it to create layers of predictive analytics so that we can create tools to help with safety and all sorts of other things, but whatever the risks are. Yeah, I think it's one of the most exciting times we've ever had in the industry to see what's going to happen over the next 5, 10, even 20 years.
Right.
Depends on how long it takes for all this to really
And I see
come
the
to
possibility, if you have one project that may be complex and has its own challenges, that's one thing. But when you're managing a huge program or portfolio, one could really capitalize on the commonalities across the portfolio to predict risk on the others. So that I can't wait to see the results of this.
And also know where you need to marshal your resources.
Yes.
Yeah. So how can Construction Nation get a hold of you if they wanted to just learn more or chat or maybe wanted to bid on a job?
OBO has their website through state.gov for business possibilities. My email address is thomastj2@state.gov, and that's the best way to get in touch.
And we will put all of this information again in the show notes, so you'll have that. So what is your parting advice for us? Something that the listeners and all of us can say, I think you have just a most unique perspective. I can't imagine anyone in the world that has a perspective like you have. So what can we do tomorrow to maybe learn some of the lessons you've learned that we can apply to our own projects and our own lives?
If something isn't working, it's okay to make a change. Processes and standard practices are so helpful and they're wonderful, but if something isn't working, it's okay to make the adjustment. It's important to recognize the gap and go ahead and change. And that's something we could all start tomorrow.
It's interesting too, because a lot of times we don't recognize it until we're bold enough to actually listen to someone else. That person that is annoying us, maybe what they're saying actually is valid. Well, I want to thank you so much, Tracy, for taking time and sharing your thoughts and your perspective. I just think it's so fabulous what you're doing, and it's so important to all of us in the United States and in the world as well. So we appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
So Construction Nation, remember, dream teams don't just happen. They're built one step at a time. And as Tracy has said, a lot of times you have to change when things aren't working and do what it takes. Can you imagine how nimble she has to be in her teams with all the changes and things they have to face on projects, and yet they're getting them done, and they're getting them done to meet standards that would not be normal in these countries that they're built in, with a workforce that they have to train. Think about that. What could you do on your projects if you maybe took a little more thought and time into figuring out what you could do to train people better or approach things maybe in a different way? So why not send this episode out to everyone on your team and have them start thinking about it? Because you don't have to do this alone. Have them help you. The faster you can build your dream team is the faster you can build that team with all the knowledge that they have together, the collective. And remember that we're having a beta test right now. Between now and September 17th, we are going to be offering our construction scorecard to any project team. So up till now, we've only offered it to the teams that we actually have worked on and we've been partnering. But I have so many people come to me and say they really want to have a construction scorecard. And so we are going to allow any project team to utilize it. And so if you want to be part of this beta test, just give me an email at sue@constructiondreamteam.com, and we will talk about getting a project, or if you have multiple projects, going. We also have a way that you can roll it up into, if you have multiple projects, into a dashboard. So we can talk about that as well. But we're going to see how well this all works. And so the beta test is on. Remember, Construction Dream Team drops every Monday morning at 4 a.m. Pacific time. So please join me next week when I will interview another industry leader or expert about the people side of construction, so you can learn how to create your construction dream team. Thank you so much, Tracy, for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been my real pleasure.
And thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you next time.